Hi again. So, the second and final part of the McLaren Report into alleged state-sponsored doping in Russian sport has been published in the last few hours. It backs up its earlier findings and has some new accusations too.
We are now able not only to confirm the findings of the first report, but also to put them into sharper and clearer focus. A cover-up that evolved over the years from uncontrolled chaos to an institutionalized and disciplined medal-winning strategy and conspiracy. A cover-up that operated on an unprecedented scale.
Artie's Laura Smith has been following the McLaren Report publication news conference.
Well, this does what McLaren called earlier sharpen the findings of his first report, which came out in July. And essentially, it's a deeper look into the evidence that he put forward then. For example, he says the investigation found out not just that urine samples had been tampered with, but how they had been tampered with. He said they had analysed samples from Russian athletes and found, for example, the wrong DNA in them, so that it was clear that they came from someone else. Added salt, for example, and altogether he said that 1,000 Russian athletes were either involved or implicated. It corroborates, he says, what Grigory Rodchenkov, the former head of the Russian anti-doping laboratory, said, RUSADA. The original allegations we know came from him, and the emails that McLaren says prove state involvement come from Rodchenkov's computer. Now, these are going to be heavily analysed by the Russian side in the coming days and weeks. They, of course, see Rodchenkov as highly suspect. He's a man who admits that he switched samples in the laboratory, and the Russian side is suspicious that, in fact, he's trying to shift responsibility from himself onto the government and the FSB. And, of course, we know he's facing criminal proceedings for abuse of authority in Russia. McLaren finished his press conference earlier with an impassioned plea. He said we should be working together to eradicate doping in sport, to make sport clean. He also said that Russia now has what he called a comprehensive and effective program which will make a difference. Russia, of course, has long admitted that it does have a problem with doping, and since the release of the first report, it's implemented an anti-doping commission and also criminal proceedings for complicity in doping. So the Russian side is going to be taking a long, hard look at this report in the coming hours and days.
Yeah, echoing that, Russia says it's taking the accusations very seriously. Last month, Moscow made doping incitement to use performance-enhancing drugs a criminal offence. An independent anti-doping commission has now been established, and the Russian anti-doping agency was separated, too, from the sports ministry. It's now funded directly from the federal budget. The penalties for offences have also been increased. But a conversation overheard at a recent meeting of World Anti-Doping officials did reveal, too, the extent, it appears, of prejudice towards Russian athletes these days. Is part of a discussion overheard between the head of the World Anti-Doping Agency and its Director General.
It's good to say we're working with Russia, but don't give the impression that we're rushing.
Just the neutral David Walsh theory.
We're not desperate for them to come back. They'll come back if they do the right thing.
Sports writer and sociology professor Ellis Cashmore spoke to me just last hour. He says Russia's been demonised since the Ukraine conflict, and that might have set the tone from McLaren's reports.
I think we have to understand McLaren's second report in the context of a widening, I suppose, its conflict. Russia has been, and I suppose this sounds a very strong word, but demonized, particularly since the Ukraine conflict. And I think that almost systematically, if there is something going wrong, people look to Russia and point the fingers of accusation. So McLaren would have been extremely unpopular if he'd have had a softer report. In other words, if he would have offered mitigating circumstances or an understanding. There's been a hardening of his resolve to find Russia guilty of the most serious possible offences when it comes to doping.
Other thoughts, experts and officials here in Russia say many of the accusations in the report are without grounds. Some who we spoke to, too, believe it's not fair to concentrate only on one country in fighting the doping problem.
The Western media is very skillfully blowing up in rage over doping. It's not only our problem. Doping is a world problem, and it should be fought as we are doing, with criminal prosecutions. And the laws should be the same for all teams. Why be so principled about Russia and not other countries? There should be no double standards.
It's difficult to talk about banning all Russian athletes. If we apply this rule to them, it should be applied to all foreign athletes as well. We know that many of them have a record of doping but still perform in international competitions. If we want to clean up all world sports, let's start. But we should not concentrate on only one country.